and Alexander for having me invited to Belgrade. I must say this is my first time in Belgrade and my first time at this conference, and I hope it will be not the last one. So he invited me to speak about importance of indoor environmental quality, and I prepared a short lecture, and I would call it a short course to introduce to you some of the most important and fundamental facts that we should be thinking about when we design indoor environment. But before I go, I would like to make one comment on Dušan's presentation, and not to start an argument, but just to say that even though the green buildings do not sufficiently improve or significantly improve indoor environment, I think one of the biggest advantage of that is that they raise attention to other aspects than just energy and construction. So the certification schemes like WELL, for example, independently whether you just, you can argue whether it's a good or not good, it raises attention of the entire field and the practice to the aspects of indoor environment. And I think this is a very important moment now, just to provide more evidence to that this is the right direction. And I believe that this is the right direction. And of course, the first iPhone was not perfect. And of course, the first certification schemes that provide some information on how to certify indoor environmental quality in buildings will not be perfect as well. But it doesn't mean that they cannot be improved in time. So coming back, another comment I want to say is that there is a study in Singapore that was just published and is still under analysis that actually shows that Green Mark certification scheme in Singapore is successfully improving the rehabilitation according to this scheme, is successfully improving not only satisfaction of the occupants of the building, but also the reported symptoms of health of those occupants. And in fact, that's probably the only study that I know that has such, besides the study that you are now doing, Dušan, that actually shows that. Most of the studies, other studies are based only on post-occupancy evaluations, and then we need more of that, and I think that more of that will be done. So I need to go back to my presentation because the time is running. So I want to, as I said, I want to give you some few facts on why it is important to not to forget about energy, not to think about energy all the time, and not to forget other aspects in the building. So so this is a citation from the report that it's a World Green Building Council that published the report. They took the experts from the entire world, and then those experts were looking at all the evidence there is with respect to the effects of indoor environmental quality on performance and productivity of people. But one of the important statements in this report that can be downloaded is actually freely available, and all the data that they used is also freely available on internet. So those who are interested to look at this, all the evidence that they published, it's out there. But the most important finding, I think, to me, is because the Green Building Council is more about sustainability, energy, and water use, and all that stuff. And they say that the most important for organization is to measure how their building impact on their most valuable asset. And most valuable asset of a building, they do not recognize the energy or water use and so on. They are employees, people in a building. So basically this report is saying, do the human-centric thing. So humans are the most important in a building. All others is just an envelope in the context. Of course, this context is also important, but humans in the buildings are the most important. I know that Veronica will show it. I'm sorry, Veronica. We didn't not. I mean, we should align our presentations, but anyway. So this is what they show. And this has been, we have evidence from the guidebook for architects in 70s in California published exactly the same figure, basically. Well, this figure shows what is, if you think about the cost of running the building, what is the split between the different costs of running the buildings. And then there are dots, small dots of different colors, and there are many dots of orange color, and one dot of the violet, and few dots of blue. And basically, in order to run successfully building and operate, and economically, the employees, people in a building, is the biggest cost. All other costs are much lower. So most of the dots are the costs of running, of having people in a building. The one dot is energy, is a 1% of all the costs, and 9% is a rental cost. So rental cost is even more than the energy cost. So say, if you have a 10% variation in all of these aspects, so let's say you install the pump that is 10% more effective, right? So then you will get only a 0.1% reduction in the cost of running a building. On average, of course, right? But let's assume that if you improve the performance or efficiency of your employees by 1%, so 10% less than the efficiency of your pump, you will still have a much higher gain of saving in running the building than improving the efficiency of your pump. So what I want to say is that I don't want to say that energy is not important. I just want to say that energy and non-energy benefits are low-hanging fruits. I think we only have to think about this, that there is an opportunity to basically make a lot of savings. I'm not thinking about here about benefits. It's another issue, but it's just a lot of savings of operation of the building and a lot of satisfaction for the people that are in actually the buildings. So my few slides that I will show are based on publications that are available, and I quickly advertise them, and actually I don't have enough time to speak about all of it, but if the people here who are interested to read about it, know more about it, I basically propose that you read the journal, Asher Journal, a few years back published a question and answer paper in which we ask the question and give a short answer. You can read it before you go to sleep tonight on how indoor environment affects performance. And you will be such an expert as I am now when you read this article. There is more sophisticated article, it's a scientifically based, this time it's 10 questions, but it's more like academic type, published in Building and Environment. And there are other publications, especially I would recommend the publication on the right, which is a guidebook which talks about financial aspects of what are the financial implications of improving indoor environment in buildings. So how it is that indoor environment or buildings affect people? So basically through the operation and design of a building, we either modify indoor environmental quality, or basically that they have an direct impact on human responses. And then those effects do provide some benefits. These can be the different benefits. I mean, I can feel more satisfied, and then probably I go more often to work, and I am, more energetic at work, and so on, so on. Also, I get less sick when I am at work, or I actually work much more effectively, and then we can put the value of that benefit. And if you have that value of the benefit, then we can say, okay, we earn so much money because we invest in that aspect of indoor environment. So how much is to earn, I will show you in a moment. But basically, in fact, the indoor environment can affect people in buildings, and there are 7 mechanisms that are identical for thermal environment and air quality. And then it affects our performance, how we work in buildings, by distracting us from work, by motivating us to work, and by changing our level of stimulation, and by affecting our health. And these are either neurobehavioral symptoms such as fatigue, headache, and all that stuff, and also there could be other types of acute health symptoms such as allergic reactions and so on and so on. Then indoor environmental quality can affect how we sleep at home, and that has an effect on our cognitive performance. And of course, if we are absent from work because we get sick, it has an effect on our productivity. It's only 5 minutes, so okay. So then, many people say, okay, the most important parameter for people in buildings is satisfaction or comfort and so on. So I just want to say that by analyzing the responses of more than 10,000 occupants of office buildings in more than 600 office buildings in the United States, they were asked about which parameters they are satisfied with when they are in the office, and also satisfaction with which parameters has an effect on how they work. And you can see on the left, on the vertical axis, what parameters were asked. And then there were parameters such as classical indoor environmental quality parameters, and also they were asked about colors, furnishing, and all that stuff. All the aspects that are important if you think about indoor environmental quality. So when they were specifically asked, or when we looked at which parameters they need to be satisfied with, that they associate with their work performance, the top 4 or the top 5 are the classical indoor environmental quality parameters. And these are temperature, noise, air quality, building maintenance, and visual comfort. So all the aspects are classical for indoor environmental quality that has 4 cardinal parameters. All the other aspects were important, but not that important. However, if we look at the same occupants and their satisfaction, so what brings the satisfaction in the work when they go to work? What is for them important for that satisfaction? Actually, temperature, noise, air quality are not that important. Other aspects that are important. What I just want to say here is that the outcome or the target or the aim is very important. We need to always ask ourselves, do we design buildings for comfort? Do we design buildings for, of course, always health? That's something that never has to be forgotten. But what is important? I mean, people should be comfortable in the modern office, or we should provide the conditions that they work well in the modern offices. So, I mean, this is answer that is open, the question that is open, and I don't want to answer that. The trend that I see is more into direction of feeling more comfortable, providing more benefits, more values from the comfort part, which I do not see the very quick translation into the improved performance. Hopefully it will come. Anyway, if you ask people if the temperature is not very well controlled, if there is air quality problem or the noise problem, I will not be working very well. Although I have a big space, so that's another story. So what is the evidence? So if we look at the literature, for now I think we have sufficient evidence to say that there is a clear relation between the temperature and air quality and office work. And there's nothing to be discussed here. I think we have enough evidence, enough studies, and relationships. Maybe those relationships are, maybe the accuracy or precision is plus minus 1%, plus minus 0.5% or something like this. I think having more information is good, but I mean, implementing this into actual buildings will provide more benefit than new research work on this. So, basically what we know is about 5 to 10% you can expect in case of office work And this is an example of one relationship. It's between the ventilation and performance of office work. This relation is a non-linear relationship, and we don't have air quality metric here. We have ventilation, right? So ventilation is used as an air quality metric. I'll come back to this in a moment. And then higher ventilation is a higher air quality, and you will see that there is effects are probably a few percent. Just 1 to 3%, maybe 4, maybe 5, but no more than this. And of course, the biggest benefit you can get when you have poor air quality, which is low ventilation, and then if you go to the high air quality, and many of the new modern office buildings, they already have high ventilation, high air quality, it's very difficult to document any additional benefit. So what about the thermal environment? Again, we see few percent, and this is a relationship based on several studies that show how the thermal sensation vote here, we are not talking about the temperature. We have the relationship for the temperature, but temperature is, you know, people in northern part of Europe prefer different temperature than people in the southern part of Europe. So thermal sensation here, how I feel thermally, is a much better indicator of the impact of the thermal environment. And then a few percent, and this is an inverted U-curve, so if it is too warm or too cold, we will not perform well. Note that the thermal neutrality, which is an essential part of the comfort, is not a parameter that will improve, I mean, it's not parameter that is optimal for the optimal performance. Optimal performance slightly below neutrality on a cool side, just slightly below. And probably the reason is that, I mean, during a cognitive work, we produce energy that has to be removed. That's probably one of the mechanisms here that can be explaining this. Now, more important stuff. I think the conditions in offices are fine. Not many people complain. Schools are really a huge problem. And it's all over the world and all over the Europe, and even in a very well-developed countries like rich countries, there is still a problem of the environment in schools. We see that the elevated temperatures and poor air quality can affect performance of schoolwork. However, you define that by about 15 to 20%. We have only evidence from schools. There's no laboratory studies. It's very difficult to bring children and actually do the study in the laboratory. And also, I mean, would you do that? I mean, so we have that information, and look at the size of the effect. It's a huge size of effect, much bigger than for adults, right? So we recently published some summary of this evidence. One relation here is that is in the press, will be published soon. We are working on it. It's looking at the relationship between measured carbon dioxide concentration, which is a metric of ventilation, and performance of children. And you will see here that the studies that are available are for the CO2 levels from 900 to about 2000 ppm. And if you convert it into the ventilation rates, we are talking about this very narrow end here. It's about to 10, right, liter per second, less than 10 liter per second. I don't know offices that have lower than 10 liter per second per person. So even going for such a small change in schools will have a significant benefit, more than 10% for performance of schoolwork. And the same for the temperature. We have evidence here. We don't have that U-shaped curve, and in which we see again that temperatures, increasing the temperatures in schools will have a negative effect on the performance of schoolwork. Note that all the refurbished buildings or energy retrofitted buildings, even in Denmark, suffer from elevated temperatures. And especially in schools, where the ventilation goes off whenever children leave the school during hot summer or maybe hot period, and then they come back to the school, to the classroom with a high temperature. Look what is the impact of that on children. There is also an evidence that we have that poor indoor environmental quality affects the absence rates. And then we talk about 1 to 2 days, which is probably very little, but it is still significant. So all looks very nice, and I say, okay, we have that evidence is there, it's nice, let's start to implement it. But it's very difficult to do that because there are unsolved questions, and I see a lot of students, and these are actually the list for a very nice many PhD projects or even master projects and so on, even for postdocs and so on, even for research. So the question is, which pollutants can be associated with effects on performance? We do CO2, people say, right? So there is a debate because there have been evidence that CO2 affects performance and so on. This is non-systematic evidence and it's not confirmed, it's still debated, and we need more information on that. But we don't have a magic pollutant, and we don't have even a metric that can allow us to do that. So are there any risks associated with the use of adaptive thermal comfort? You know that we are now stepping into saving of energy, so we use adaptive thermal comfort model, allowing people to adapt to the thermal environment. I have an evidence, it's not published yet, it will be coming now soon, that probably adaptive thermal comfort is not the right way to do, because elevated temperatures will have negative effect on our performance. So we can reach the thermal comfort because of the different reasons and so on, but we are not able to perform well. Then Dusan asked the question, do green buildings promote performance? Well, I don't have an answer. There is only some evidence from the self-estimated performance, so no objectively measured. And then few cardinal questions is, how can we measure performance? So here in the lab it's easy for us to measure. If we go to the office environment, to the school, how we measure performance, what is a metric? We don't have that metric. And then, how can we use those evidence in economic calculations? And what are the combined effects? So if we have a building in which there is a problem of temperature, noise, light, and air quality, what we should do, where we should act first, which will have the biggest, is it a combined effect of all of them, or is it one parameter that will, so this is another. And then finally, to which extent is performance affected by sleep quality, that is affected by indoor environmental quality. I'll stop at sleep only. So we are starting a big program at the Technical University of Denmark on studying the impact of indoor environmental on sleep quality, indoor environmental quality in bedroom on sleep quality. Note, more than 20 years of our life we spent in our bedrooms, and very little information how the bedroom quality affects us. We know that sleep quality is important for our cognitive performance, health, and even, you know, the problems such as obesity, problems such as dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and so on, are associated now to sleep quality. So the question is whether indoor environmental quality is important, and we have some small evidence that it is, but we are running now, we are starting the program, and I hope I will come back in 2 years here and tell you about that. Then, so what are the, what I showed you, the 1%, 2%, 3%, what are the consequences for the economic, what is the economic impact? Well, I cannot stop mentioning this. This is probably one of the first estimation that was done. And it was done by Rada, who is sitting there, was visiting us. And he is a graduate of Maria and Branko. He came, visited us in 2001, and for a few weeks, and it is during the time when, you know, there was an attack on the towers in New York, actually. And then we discussed what he should do, and he produced a fantastic work. He actually looked at our first evidence on the effects of indoor environmental quality, or indoor air quality on performance. And he made some estimations on what does the impact. So what are the potential revenues of that? The work was published in Asher Transactions. This Asher Transactions, not many people know about it. And actually he showed that, you know, the payback time of improvements, if you put in the information, benefits from improved performance can be less than 2 years, right? So, I mean, I don't see any other investment in the world now that will provide you a payback time, such a short payback time. Look, in some cases the payback times are even below half a year, so it is just incredible. And this is confirmed by the American study, independent American estimation, probably published later, I mean, done probably later during nearly the same time as Rada was doing his calculations on the benefits of improving indoor air quality in US buildings, and in which they also estimated the payback times will be below 2 years if you consider the benefits from improved health conditions, comfort, and performance. So for years I was thinking, when the studies were published, I was thinking, all right, there is a lot of interest, so it will be implemented immediately in the buildings. Then I realized there is one important limiting factor, and I realized this recently. The important factor is that we, as a field, do not have a metric. Like the other fields, they have their metrics, they have their key performance indicators to which they can refer, right? So energy is the easiest, right? So people have, you know, energy meter, they can say, well, we designed this, the building is performing this, and we do this, and then, and we don't have those metrics for indoor air quality and indoor environmental quality. And we need to start somewhere. So I think this is a significant barrier holding back innovation in indoor air quality. And if you look now at all the developments in indoor air quality aspects and sensor technology, we are still, like, you know, trying to do something, but we don't know where is our reference, where is our benchmark. If you look only at the aspects of indoor air quality, actually the only known indices for me for indoor air quality is a ventilation rate, which is not an index, carbon dioxide, which is even worse than ventilation rate, and then TVOC that has been shown to have no effect on people performance and health. There's no relation whatsoever. And then for some time we use the percentage of dissatisfied with indoor air quality or assessments of people. It seems like it has been forgotten. We don't like this, but I see there are some groups that want to return to that. And maybe it will be returned. But Dusan was talking about the certification schemes. So what we did is we actually look at the certification schemes and what, if you want to say, so how, if I am new in the field and I want to measure parameters defining indoor environmental quality, so I mean the question would be which parameters we want to measure. So where I find the reference for this? So I go to the certification schemes. So if I review those certification schemes, I find out that there is about 100 indicators for indoor environmental quality. So which one I should use? I don't know. I mean, there are no 100 indicators of energy. It's a one metric. So for thermal environment, there are 19 indicators. For indoor air quality, 39 indicators. For acoustic environment, 20 indicators. And visual environment, 12 indicators. So which one I should use if I want to characterize my environment? And even if I pick few of those, do I pick the right one? So what I want to say is that we really need to start somewhere. And I want to present you my proposal where we should start. It was just published in the new ASHRAE journal. So the ones who want to read about it, is a short article about the new index for classifying indoor environmental quality, and we call it TAIL. And TAIL stands for thermal, acoustic, indoor air quality, and the luminous environment. And it is an attempt to somehow present the quality of indoor environment by the unified method or by unified metric, which provides information on each 4 cardinal components of indoor environmental quality, which is a thermal environment, acoustic environment, indoor air quality, and luminous environment, and you'll see those squares here, and also to provide information about the overall quality of indoor environment, which are the Roman numbers in the center. And 1 is the best and 4 is the worst. The red is the worst and the green is the best. So just communicating by colors and Roman numbers how to this. So, and under this, there are parameters to be measured, and they are actually, there is the entire protocol that has been developed, and we will be publishing it soon. I'm just making this point here so that you know that this development is going on. So I'll stop here, and I just want to repeat what I said, is that it's well documented that both thermal conditions and indoor air quality affect performance of office work and schoolwork. The effects, mechanism behind those effects are surprisingly similar. And they tend to affect performance across the board, suggesting that it's the ability to concentrate. I mean, that there is a one ability is basically that is affected by this, and that is common to all the parameters. And there is no evidence that subjective acceptance of indoor environmental conditions leads to optimal performance, and self-estimated performance is not an indicator of objectively measured performance. I didn't have much time to say that, but that's basically one of the that's one of the parameters that's used, because easy self-estimated performance, but it's actually not the one that should be used. And then performance tests may not always predict the real work, so we need some tests that predict real work. And then that's all. Probably I stop here. So I'm sorry, it is probably a long 15 minutes, but I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thanks very much.
Okay, so are there any questions on this interesting presentation? Everything is clear, Pawel. You did a great job.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.